Welcome to this week's edition of The Link. The impression we had is that government did not introduce any new tax on anyone. But you may be surprised tonight. Some of you are going to have to pay another extra tax, which you used not to pay. So pay attention as we discuss. We are going to discuss something they call the digital tax, or tax on digital services. You might have heard of it, but you might say, how does it concern me? We're going to discuss that in a moment. My guest tonight is Miss Juliet Najjinda, Tax Manager, PricewaterhouseCoopers. She's been here. You might know her. Juliet, welcome.
Thank you, Sam.
Government told us no new taxes, but there's this digital services tax. Explain to us a little bit how this tax works and who pays it.
All right. Thanks, Sam. So, yes, like you rightly mentioned, government said there were no new taxes this year, and rightly so, because this tax has been in existence since 2016. That is when the Act was amended to provide for this digital services tax. But for the longest time that it's been around, since 2016, there was no mechanism for the non-residents to actually account for that tax. So it's until January this year that we saw URA starting to put up some sort of guidance on how the non-residents should go about accounting the tax. And later on in April, they designed an online platform and also set 1st July as the date for starting to comply with this tax requirement. So the way it works, like you've mentioned, it's really focusing on non-residents who are providing digital services.
Non-residents, who's a non-resident?
So a non-resident is typically, a business or someone who has no presence in Uganda. And the names that easily come to our minds when we talk about non-residents that provide such services are the likes of Facebook, the likes of Amazon, the likes of Netflix. We know that those companies are not in Uganda. They are somewhere in Ireland or wherever. But we in Uganda consume those services. If you talk of Netflix, for example, many of us relate with it because we consume the video streaming services that company provides. So we have a number of those companies that provide such services, software services, search engine services that are not in Uganda, but have customers in Uganda that consume their services. So those are the people or the companies that this tax is targeting this time around, yes.
All right, so how does Netflix pay the tax, for instance? Just so people can understand. By the way, before you answer that question, this segment is brought to you by Standard Chartered Bank. They are leaders in the digital space in Uganda in terms of the banks, and we're discussing digital issues now, so we're in tandem. So yes, Julie, tell us, how does Netflix, for instance, pay the tax?
All right, so using Netflix as an example, and assuming that we know how it works, Netflix is not in Uganda, but most of us have had a chance to pay for their streaming services.
Movies.
Yeah, the movies, to be able to access the movies. So what would happen for a company like that one is, one, they are required to register with URA with effect from 1st July to start accounting for VAT. The tax in question is VAT in particular.
Value-added tax.
Value-added tax, yes. And that tax is supposed to be charged on services that are consumed by the people who use, say, in this case, the Netflix, who buy the movies. So what will typically happen is that you have been already paying Netflix, say, $10 or $100, depending on what package you have. So Netflix now will be required to register with URA for tax with effect from 1st July and also start tracking the payments that they are receiving from people in Uganda that are not VAT registered, non-business customers, because those are the ones on whom they are required to account for VAT. So what that means is that if you and I are customers to Netflix, when Netflix sells to us the movies or the streaming services, they'll now need to know who are these customers in Uganda. So you'll see that they may start to ask for more information around your identification, your tax identification number, your names and things like that, for them to be able to establish that the person that I'm selling this service to, Sam, is an individual. He is not registered for VAT. So when I invoice him, I should add a component of 18% VAT on the movie package that he is buying.
So if it's $100, it's $118.
Yes, that's correct. But then on the other hand, what the guidance that comes out with this tax is that if in the same instance we have Netflix dealing with a company, say like, you know, NTV, Media Nation Group, that company is registered for VAT, or even a bank that may not be registered for VAT, there's a requirement for you in Uganda as a company like Nation Media Group to account for VAT on any service that you import. So because there's already that requirement for you to account for VAT locally on whatever services you import, then Netflix will not charge you VAT the second time.
Let's just pause there. I am NTV.
Yes.
And I use Netflix.
Yes.
It's something we're doing together. So what do you mean that I have to account for VAT on the importation? Can you explain that?
All right. So that is what has been happening even before this digital services was rolled out on 1st July, is that businesses in Uganda, whenever you would pay a non-resident for a service that they've made available to you in Uganda, then you would be required to account for VAT. When you're filing your return, you'd show a component of VAT on imported services.
Who pays that VAT?
So the person, in this case, Nation Media Group, who has paid Netflix for the service that they've provided to you in Uganda, you're looked at as having imported a service.
That's true.
So in that instance, then, you would have to account for VAT on the services that you've imported.
From Netflix?
Yes, because under the local VAT laws, the obligation to account for VAT on any service that you import lies with you who has imported and used the service in Uganda.
So that's why VAT on the digital VAT, let me call it that, will not be charged on companies because they're already doing something on the VAT anyway.
Yes. But you and I, because we have not, typically we don't file VAT returns as individuals or as sole proprietors, then you would have to get Netflix to take on that obligation to charge us VAT and remit it to the URA. Yes.
All right. So how is it going to affect the common person? Let's go back to that question. Me, I'm a consumer. I'm not a business, I'm Sam.
Yes.
I use Netflix or eBay or Amazon.
Yes.
I'm buying, you know, nice stuff. I'm buying electronics. How is it going to affect me going forward?
Yeah. So what you need to be aware of, and especially the non-resident whom you're dealing with, is first of all, that non-resident needs to have a relationship where you're paying them for a service that they are providing to you. Yeah. So there has to be a component of a payment from you as Sam to the non-resident. Okay. Then once the non-resident, we expect that the non-residents are going to start, you know, when you look at, say, Netflix, Facebook, they are going to start asking for extra information to know that if I've sold something to Sam, maybe I've advertised his shop, his boot shop, who is Sam? So they'll ask you for either your national identification details or any form of identification, your tax identification number, your name, your details, so that then they can test, because when you have a tax identification number, you can check with the URA and confirm that this person is an individual, he's Sam. So if he has bought from me this service of, you know, advertising as Facebook, I need to charge him VAT.
What if I don't have a TIN?
If you don't have a TIN, then we would take it that you're a private consumer, like because any company in Uganda that's doing business would be required to be registered with URA and have a TIN. So even if you're a business and and you don't have a TIN, then that shows that you're not accounting for VAT, like we talked about earlier. So you'd also be in the scope of those for whom the non-resident is required to account for VAT.
Now, Julie, I'm wondering, I use Facebook for showing my dresses in my shop.
Yes.
Am I going to be affected by this tax? I just put on Facebook, show guys, I have new shoes. And am I affected?
No, so there are two types of users.
Yeah.
There's someone like you who may have your shop in your car because you know, you have an account with Facebook. It's your private account. You keep posting for your friends to see what you're posting, and you're not paying Facebook anything. You are not going to be affected.
Okay.
But then you may have seen that sometimes when you're using such platforms, there's sponsored content where the user, the owner of that advert actually pays Facebook so that that advert has wider reach. So in that case, if you are a shop owner, you have paid Facebook something, then Facebook needs to know who is this Sam who has paid for this advert.
So there's a transaction.
Yes, there's a transaction and you have paid for it.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Julie, for painting the picture on this digital tax. Viewers, if you use eBay, I don't know, Facebook, if you pay, or other suppliers digitally, you're going to be required to, you're going to be charged an extra 18% on everything that you pay. So Julie says the tax has been around, but it has not been implemented. So for me, it's a new tax, which you're going to start paying now effectively, even if it has been on the law books for a while. We hope we added value to you, and we want to thank Standard Chartered Bank for bankrolling us to bring you this important information now today on Digital, because they're a leading digital bank in Uganda. That was the link. Thank you for joining us tonight.